going to be breaking down how I helped a 7-figure entrepreneur who was already doing 6 figures a month rebuild his offer and launch a new webinar that generated him thousands of dollars and literally got so many new members into his Skool community that he had to close it down, like temporarily. He shut it down just on the call because there's so many people, he wanted to actually shut it down and focus on delivery. And that is a really good problem to have. So I'm going to take you guys onto my laptop and show you exactly what we did and kind of how his business is structured. So if you're building a community, you can just take that strategy, implement it for yourself. And he's actually got a really unique way that he drives traffic. So let's get into it. All right, so this is a 0 to 60K launch. So Farhoon had a high ticket offer that he scaled to 6 figures a month. And then he decided that he wanted to make a strategic pivot. And that's where this webinar comes in. So you can see here on the side screen, this is just a little preview, but it is a $69 a month offer. All right, so next slide. So during the Skool games, he was actually able to win not just once in May, I believe the first time, but also twice. He won again in Q1 of 2025. So he's won the Skool games twice, got to meet Hormozi, all of that stuff. And that's actually how I met him. So I met Farhoon back in June, and it was during the Hormozi mastermind. I got to go because I had multiple clients at this mastermind. Had not won the Skool games myself yet. I actually won the Skool games in August, so a couple months later. But I met Farhoon at the mastermind, and he just actually was giving me some advice because at the time he was growing really, really well on LinkedIn. And I didn't know a ton about that platform, but I had just signed Max Pearson as a client, and I was kind of using him as like a beta client. He wasn't paying me or anything, but he was technically a client. I was, writing his copy for LinkedIn, and then eventually he became a paying client. But Farhoon was like an expert at LinkedIn. So he was giving me all this advice, and we formed a really good connection. And then I wound up having him as a client a couple months later. But anyways, we met in June, and Farhoon was growing super fast. He was doing 60K that month, and then a couple months, I think it was 2 months later, he hit 100K a month. But then he went through a transition. That's what happened right here. Farhoon shifted from high ticket to low ticket. And I'll get into a little bit why he did that. It's actually a really cool pivot that he made, and it's something that most entrepreneurs don't do. But what the result of that was a extreme drop in his revenue. So his recurring revenue plummeted by over 90%. And there was actually months, I think it was just one, before he made this big launch, but he didn't even see much of a profit. He was paying everything out to his team and not really keeping anything for himself. So January of 2025 is when Farhoon comes back into the picture. So I'd worked with him on some email welcome sequences, some one-time projects, and then I meet up with him again in London. Now, let me just break down a little bit why he made this pivot, because I think it's interesting. He was charging like 2.5K, high ticket offer, helping people get jobs in the UK. So really, really niche offer. And he just didn't feel right about it because he wasn't able to help most people that needed jobs. They just didn't have 2.5K to spend. And, that makes sense, right? Like most people that need a job in the UK are probably just graduate students that are living off of like a loan, or maybe they're working at a coffee shop or waiting tables or something, but they don't have a ton of money to just throw at, a program that's going to supposedly get them a job. And he had a really good success rate. So he's getting these people jobs, which then they could pay him. But there's a disconnect because he's helping unemployed people, but he's charging high ticket. And he, even though he had scaled it to 100K, even though he had gotten all these case studies, he didn't feel right about that. So he switched to low ticket so that he could actually serve the masses. And that's not something most entrepreneurs do, right? Like he was successful in the Skool games. He had the credibility to charge high ticket. He pivoted the pricing model because he morally felt like it was the right thing to do. And he also felt like branding wise, it was going to carry him to the place that he wanted to be. So he switched to a low ticket offer, had this revenue crisis where his sales plummeted, which he knew was going to happen when he switched. But MRR dropped by 90% just because even though he had somewhat of an audience, charging low ticket always means slower growth. It's just inevitable. Even if you have a huge audience, I've worked with people that have even like 2 million or 2 million followers, like Instagram, or hundreds of thousands as well with like fitness coaches. And it's a struggle to get people into a low ticket membership. Like it doesn't just happen just because you have followers. So it has to be like structured properly when it comes to the funnel. It has to be structured properly when it comes to the offer and all of that. So what we had right in front of us come January when I met up with Farhoon again was a very high stakes webinar where he was going to revive this business and start generating profit again so he could pay himself and not just be dishing out all of the cash to his team, right? So webinar mattered because number one is the first impression. So he's relaunching a new offer. This is huge. When you're launching your offer on Skool, your first webinar is important. You want to get that right. You want to get the script dialed. Obviously, you're going to improve over time, but you want it to be good because it's going to leave a lasting impression. People, especially if there's a replay, are going to go and they're going to see that. It's high visibility. So especially if you have an audience and you're launching an offer, everyone's seeing that. That's the first time you're pitching to somebody. it should be good. It should be an offer they want. It should be pitched in a way that doesn't feel icky or salesy. And so it's high visibility, it's also high stakes, and obviously when you have money that needs to be made because you've got high overhead, financial recovery is essential. I mean, you don't want to be in a position where you're recovering finances. You kind of want to be in a position where you're just like making a profit on top of that overhead. So, but obviously this is an entrepreneur who had been in the game a bit, so he knew that like there's an element of that when you have overhead that's already established and you voluntarily decide to pivot. So the mission realignment, basically, he started by identifying the audience's needs. He knew the audience really well, and he knew that they all needed jobs, but they didn't have that money. So he recognized his audience needed more accessible solutions. He made that strategic pivot. We already talked about that new pricing model, and it just aligned better with his mission because it was more about the impact and about helping people across his entire following. So yeah, his initial promotional issues, like he didn't have clear messaging. So when I met up with him in January, it was actually because I had flown to the UK to meet up with my team, get my copywriter together, get my ads guy together, and just have like a team like event. And so Farhoon lives in the UK and he was in London, and so basically introduced my team to him, and that's when I actually found out he had pivoted. I had no idea until I met up with him in person, and I was like, just kind of there to connect and work with other entrepreneurs. It's always a good thing, and come to find out he really needed help with his marketing. Because he had a good offer, but he wasn't articulating it in a way that was getting people to opt in for his webinar. So he had unclear messaging. The value proposition wasn't necessarily apparent to people. He wasn't like articulating why they should be on that webinar. He had weak visual design, just means that like the eyes, like when people viewed his Instagram stories or his LinkedIn posts, the eyes weren't drawn to the right thing. He's really good at LinkedIn. So he's a legend with LinkedIn. That's the place where he gets a lot of traffic. It's kind of unique to most people on Skool. But when it comes to Instagram stories, there's just a couple tweaks, and the emails as well, that make sure people are looking at the right things, because they don't necessarily read everything when you post an Instagram story. But if you highlight the right stuff, you put things in bold, you increase the font size of certain sentences, you can make sure that they're getting the points you need them to get in order to take action on the CTA. So poor text emphasis, that just means, highlighting colors, like I said. And then there's some sequence issues with his emails, as far as like following up with people, getting people on the webinar, making sure they buy afterwards, all that stuff. So we had a strategic intervention. I think I stayed late actually one day at the office, and like me and my team were all working, and he came over from his side of the office. It was this big like rented co-working space, and so we were on the other side of the building, and he comes over and he's like, Patrice, can you take a look at this? And so what I did was I helped clarify the messaging with his Instagram story. We tweaked some things. We tweaked the colors. It's like, no, why is this green? Red is the best color for, a CTA. It's going to convert way better. We tweaked that and then enhanced the visuals. Did some strategic highlighting, optimized the emails. I looked at his entire sequence of emails that was going out to all the registrants to make sure we could really get people on that webinar. And those were the fundamental things that increased his show-up rate. So we did the makeover on Instagram posts. He has a bit of an Instagram following that's mostly, I think the traffic is driven from LinkedIn onto Instagram. And then we optimized his email sequence so that we could make sure that was formatted to actually get people to read all the way through and join the webinar. And then, enhancing the webinar. So what happened? We increased opt-ins. So we got more people to actually register for the webinar through the Instagram stories. We had a better show-up rate. So he had an incredible live show-up rate of people on the webinar that were excited, that were in the chat, that were taking action. And then his conversions went up because he had more people on the webinar, and he had people that were excited that knew what his offer was. And so the conversions went way up. And literally had too many attendees join his community, so he had to shut it down. Not shut the community down, but basically lock it so no one else could join, so he could just focus on those members. And then I think he reopened it maybe a few weeks later. So unexpected challenges. He locked down the community. So many students joined that Farhoon had to temporarily pause it, create a wait list, focus on delivery, and then he was just really focused on quality over quantity because this is a new offer, right? So he's launching it. And even though he's optimizing to get a lot of revenue in the door, he also wants to make sure that those initial students get results because they're the ones that are going to be the face, the testimonials for all the future members that are going to join, right? So that's huge. Key elements of the successful webinar, and this goes for any offer, you want to have a niche audience fit. You do not want to create a webinar about success for anyone and everyone. Ideally, you want to know the age range, you want to know where this person that you're speaking to lives, what problem you're solving for them, and one way to think of it is your offer as a business owner is this big offer that you need to divide into 1,000 miniature offers. And your webinar can solve one of those little thousandths of a problem. So all these miniature problems are just really, really specific things. And if I was to illustrate this with a copywriting offer, maybe the problem I solve is how to be a better copywriter. But on a webinar, I teach people the fundamentals of really good hooks for emails. Oh, that's such like a small problem, right? Like emails is like a subset of a big copywriting problem. And then the hook is a subset of the emails, and like how to create a good subject line, good hook in that subject line to get people to click. That's such a small problem that it's very tangible. And then an engaging story. Every single webinar should have a story. I just wrote a webinar for Max Pearson, and the first like 40 slides are story-based. And even like when we move out of Max's story, we start talking about case studies and stories of other people who have been successful. And so maybe I make a video about that next, about Max's webinar, but that's something that goes in every single webinar. Clear next steps, so the audience should know exactly what action to take afterwards. And then a very clear value proposition. This is where you're going to get into the CTA. The value has to be super, super clear. All right, momentum effect. This is what happened. So Farhoon went for the Skool games again. He wound up getting to $60,000 MRR. Here you can see the screenshot. This is like on his come up where he's at 49K. Added $5,900 in one day. Successful webinars that generated immediate revenue, which he used to continue to grow the company, reinvested that. The community growth, new members created energy, testimonials, word of mouth marketing, so that led more people into his funnel. Skool games victory, that just gave more credibility and authority to him when he won a second time. Super cool. This is Farhoon with Alex Hormozy. He got flown out to Vegas to go hang out with all the other Skool games winners and basically just get this whole new platform to get experts that were looking at his business, literally Alex Hormozy giving him advice. And yeah, so that crushed. And he's now got 900 plus people in his community. And that's after switching from his high ticket to his low ticket and relaunching. He's got 60K current monthly recurring revenue after that successful webinar launch, and he's doing more with webinars, so I'm going to be chatting with him actually Saturday for his next webinar. And he's got 66,000, almost 67,000 people on LinkedIn following him, which is huge because if you don't already know this, LinkedIn is one of the best places to build a professional offer because people there are much higher quality than, let's say, TikTok, right? Like, people on LinkedIn are professional and they're not on that app to be entertained. Whereas people on TikTok are there to be entertained. And you can get conversions, you can make money on TikTok, but it's much harder because the buying power is lower and the buying motivation is lower. Whereas when people log onto LinkedIn or YouTube, for example, they're much more like interested in learning something, and therefore they're closer to a buying decision than someone that's just looking to be entertained. So that's like the way I think about it. But yeah, so he's killing it. The key takeaways is start with your offer, perfect the story on your webinar, and promote the promise. That was the big thing in the Instagram stories and in the LinkedIn and the email posts, or in the emails that went out. You really need a clear problem that you're solving. And you have to be able to articulate that in your marketing, which is why most people hire copywriters, is just to like boil down that messaging so that it's so simple. People can just look at an ad, look at an Instagram post, look at an email, and they know exactly what they're getting. And so yeah, promote it organically, leverage member results, get testimonials, and then reinvest in the community. But yeah, your webinar story ultimately is going to be the best thing when it comes to the conversions. Your promotion and your promise is going to be the best thing when it comes to the show up rate. So those are the two sides of a webinar. So you need a lot of people to show up. You need people actually there live on the webinar. And then you need a really good story and a compelling pitch and a compelling offer to actually get people to convert. So those are the two sides. Hopefully that's helpful. The next video, I don't know exactly who I'll make it about, but comment what you guys want to learn about and I'll find a case study about that. Somebody I've worked with, whether it's emails, whether it's webinars again, whether it's YouTube scripting, whether it's content creation, and by content creation, I mean like short form scripting, Instagram story posts. Like I do Instagram story posts for Max Pearson, for example. But yeah, let me know what you guys want to hear and I will film that in the next video. And feel free to book a call below if you guys want more help with your actual copywriting. That's a done for you call booking link. So if you're like a freelancer, that's not for you. This is for business owners. And I'm a high ticket copywriter, so just heads up there. But otherwise, I will see you guys in the next videos. You can absolutely learn all of this by yourself. You don't need to book a call. That's just there for people that don't want to learn it themselves, would rather hire me to do it for them. But I will see you guys in the next video, so keep crushing it.